recording right now. So I will just say I'll just give a very brief introduction, and then I will give you the floor. So welcome everyone to our new seminar. Today it's a very exciting topic because this is going to be our first seminar for our language and social justice strand. We've had quite a few seminars mentioning social justice in language before, but this is the first time we have something actually dedicated to this topic. And again, I don't want to take too much time. I will leave the floor to Dr. Ortega right now. Just one thing, as always, we are recording the session. I've already started the recording. So if you are uncomfortable with showing your face or having your voice recorded, just write in the chat, ask questions in the chat. That's going to be fine, but just be aware that's what we're doing. So, Dr. Ortega, you may turn on your microphone now. I will close mine and leave everything to you.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming in today here for this presentation talk and engagement about the topics related to social justice and language teaching, etc. I really thank you for giving me this opportunity to have this space and time. So I'm gonna try to share my screen. So it's gonna take me a second. Bear with me. And here we go. Where'd you go? Can anybody tell me or confirm that you see the screen? Okay, awesome. Thank you. So now I'm gonna move some things around here and then I should be okay. All right, like I said, thank you so much for this presentation to coming here. I'm a lecturer at Queen's University Belfast in the Applied Linguistics and TESOL program. And today I'm going to share some of the experiences that I been engaging with in the past few years, mainly from the context of Colombia in South America, that's where I conducted my doctoral dissertation. So what you will see today is all the work that has been done in Colombia in relation with social justice and English language teaching. So with that being said, more or less, my agenda is going to be covering these items, my epistemological stance, the context of this research, the frameworks, the methodology, a little bit of the findings. And then we're going to be engaging in some breakout rooms with discussions with all of you, hopefully. And then we'll be presenting and engaging in implications, limitations, and something that we could do in the future research. So before doing research, one of the things that we all as researchers need to take into account is what should we take into account before doing research? And for me, it's important the idea of the worldview, how I see the world, right? Like when you do research or when you teach, it's not like you get up in the morning and say, I'm just gonna go and teach. But there is something that happens for you and with you, which is what is in your mind, what is your history, what is your philosophy of life, however you want to call it. For me and for some people, they call it, like I said, the worldview, right? And for some other folks, they call it the cosmovision, right? And what is the cosmovision? And I'm drawing from some indigenous knowledges here from Latin America. And I believe that for researchers, it's important to recognize that there are not definite or static or fixed answers, but different lenses, visions, and beliefs of seeing the world that most people in Latin America and elsewhere have called a cosmovision of who we are. And here I explains that this cosmovision is part of my ever-changing life that evolves at all times as interrogate where I'm coming from. So my worldview and my philosophy of life, in words of Orozco Paredes and Tocansi Pafaya, it's about how we relate to others, how we see the world, how we have a vision about humanity and the relationships with the natural world as well. So in other words, The cosmovision is similar to what is called the epistemology of knowledge, in which we as subjects somehow engage with others, individuals, through different subjective experiences of our own people in contact with subjects and other contexts as well. Similarly, from the NASA PAES community in Colombia specifically, they have considered the cosmovision as a way of seeing and feeling and listening and interpreting the places where we live, the relationships that we have with others, and also the stumbling blocks, the limitations, and the difficulties that we have when we are going through life. So that cosmovision or that vision of life or that worldview or that philosophy of how you carry on your life, this is what drives us as humans when we engage both in education but also in research. And for me as a scholar, this is where I'm coming from. And in order to do that, I borrow my own epistemological stance from two concepts that were born and raised in Latin America. These two concepts are el buen vivir and sentipensante. And el buen vivir roughly means how we live well with each other, how we connect with different forms of beings, human beings, non-human beings, beyond humans and non-humans, etc. And for many communities in Latin America, like the NASA community, the Quechua language community, Aymara language community, etc., they have different words in their own language, but all means the same. Let's hold hand together to see how we can live well with each other. And the second concept that I borrow from my home country is sentipensar, which is this idea that we as humans need to balance the emotions, but also the reasons, how we think, right? And sentir in Spanish, which means sense or feel, and pensar, which means how we think. So for Falsborda and Galeano, it's how we as human beings combine all of these things, the love, the body, the heart, and in a constant balance, right? Like we as humans, we go through life trying to find that balance in between that reason and feelings and emotions, but especially for social justice and liberation, according to Rendon. So I'm going to give you a little bit of the background of the research. If you don't know, but if some people know, Colombia is a country in Latin America or South America. And to this day, in my view, we are still in conflict. So we have more than 50 years of conflict, meaning war between the different sides of like the guerrillas, paramilitaries, and other police, army, etc. So it has been this for more than 50 years in the country to this date. And just to give you a brief snapshot of where Colombia is, you can see the map on your right, the map of the American continent, and you see Colombia there. Then you see the little symbol there that indicates the capital, which is Bogota. And then now you see on your left, Bogota, which is the capital, and the place where I conducted this research was on the sort of southwest of the city, which is one of the poorest areas in the city. And there is just a little snapshot again of one of the most important symbols in Bogota, which is that mountain on the left, which is there's like a church at the top of the mountain, and you can see the whole city. So that's more or less what Bogota is. And then the second part is El Barrio Southwest High School, which is an anonymous name for the school. And this is one of the mega schools that was built a few years back in order to help and support the most marginalized communities in the city. And it can carry up to 5,000 students in 3 different shifts in the morning and the afternoon and the evening for higher education or adult education. It's a secular high school. It it comes with a diverse classrooms and students from different socioeconomical status, especially low socioeconomic status, but also different types of backgrounds like Afro-Colombian, indigenous, campesinos, which are the laborers of the land, and immigrants from Venezuela and other countries in Latin America as well. So as you can imagine, this is a school that is very diverse, but is also cater for the most marginalized communities in the city. And for my research, I explored different questions, like 3 or 4 or 5 different questions, but I wanted to share with you one specific question. The overarching question of the project was how is SJPVC envisioned, enacted, and experienced by 3 English as a foreign language teachers and their students in this Colombian public schools, high school. And SJPVC stands for Social Justice Peace Building Curriculum. So I will explain this in a moment. So how is this social justice and peace building curriculum enacted by the teachers? And then I explore different concepts here, such as peace building, social justice, critical peace education, and although more detailed and nuanced concepts such as peace, violence, and language instruction were present in the work. So what I'm presenting today is just the fundamental concepts that frame this research. So let's see. Social justice as a concept is mainly defined as a social virtue that we humans have to treat others as equals, and also involves the passion and the courage and the spirit of the human potential for more open and just society. Then critical peace education briefly describes the work that needs to be done in education to forge that equality among humans and dismantle all forms of violence while creating the structures to build a new world. And finally, peace and peace building help us move forward to continue the promotion of harmony, respect, justice, and inclusion, among others. And this needs to be done on the basis of the dialogue, problem solving, collective decision making, all these necessary and key for a social just democracy. So now that I have deployed these concepts, I would like to share with you and pivot towards my decision to use 2 specific methodologies. One is critical ethnography and case study, because these help me to understand the daily lives of real people, real students, real teachers, parents, etc., from different sources or angles, and at the same time to critically understand the power dynamics of what was happening to them as they engage in different activities in the English classroom, lessons, projects, etc. The participants of my study were the 3 English teachers, Camello, Hadassah, and Sol. These are pseudonyms, and their students. But although I observed a few classes in grades 6, 8, and 9 for context, I focused my attention on grades 10 and 11, and I also spent the majority of time in Sol's classroom first, then Hadassah's class, and a few observations in Camello's class. And although I paid attention to all the students in their classes, I only conducted focus groups with selected specific students as well. But I also observed things that were happening around the school, in the school, outside the school, in the neighborhood, etc. as well. So here are some of the instruments that I use in my research: classroom observations, teachers interviews, students focus groups, teachers focus group, and students focus groups. And I analyze some of the Colombian key documents like policy documents, guidelines for teaching English, books, the teachers' notebooks, students' notebooks, etc., and some cultural productions, painting, posters, videos, things that the students produce during their research. And for data analysis, I would like to present how I did the analysis really quick. So I use a continuous and recurring process of content analysis in which I was looking for specific patterns to find common themes while calling for specific patterns as well. So this was a constant work that I was doing since day one until the end of the research. And then something that happened is that main emerging themes came out of all of these coding and finding the themes. So these were some of the emerging themes, like social justice and peace building approach to teaching, humanizing pedagogy, epistemology of oneness and futurities, or what I mean, future realities, how the students and teachers see themselves in the future. So in today's presentation, I will only cover a few of these items because, as you can imagine, we don't have all the time. So going back to that SJPVC that I talked earlier, so the emerging concept of SJPVC, which stands for Social Justice and Peace Building Curriculum, Sol, Hadas, and Camello, the teachers, enacted SJPVC by making connections to their lived experiences, their own philosophy to life, but also creating activities to address issues of the importance and social justice as well. And for Aoki, the term curriculum is many things to many people, but it can be something that is planned and prescribed, or something that is lived by the students and the teachers. And recognizing that there are many lived curricula, as many as there are self-funded students, help me to understand that multiplicity of learning opportunities that the teachers imagine for their students. So one of the things that I wanted to share with you based on these themes that emerged is something that I call in Spanish pedagogía viva, ser, pertene, ser, llegar a ser, which roughly translates into English as living pedagogy of being, belonging, and becoming. And what is being? Well, being refers to that person, the teacher or the student, who is in continuous transformation and change, a person who puts humanity at the heart and center of their actions. And here you can see an interview excerpt from Sol, the teacher, who speaks about what it means to be a teacher. And she says, a teacher who is human and that feels humanity is already an excellent teacher, because he or she is already connected. And when you connect with humanity, you win 90% of learning. And belonging, the idea of belonging always refers not only to an affinity for a place or situation, but also longing and yearning desire to participate in changes that affect the individual and their communities positively. Hadassah's class is a good example of how belonging is present. So in her project, she asked her students how they imagine their future selves and their purpose with their community. So in this photograph that you can see today, we see how students depict their connection with community and what she likes it to be. So some of the students, while learning English and using this project, she writes, I would like, with respect to my community, that everything would be respectful in spite of the differences, and to be able to resolve them talking. Now, you can see that in some of these students' products, you may see a lot of typos or grammar errors or mistakes, however you're going to call it. But in this English class, one of the important things to notice is that the teachers were not focusing on accuracy or that everything was neat and crystal clear, but more about how students would use the language to learn through and for social justice. So belonging also, we can see how this belonging refers to how their life connection with the community made the students aware of the problems and look for possible solutions. So here in this excerpt, Alicia, one of the students, replied to the question related to how the English class has impacted her learning. And she says, when we discuss topics such as my favorite community, I think it helps us to look at our reality, the one that we live today, and how I can change that reality when I grow up. Becoming, this is the third construct that refers to who we are and who we want to be in the future. It's about a human being who comes from one place and moves to another, from one idea to another, but always looking at the future, personal future, and how I can make social transformations for all. So in these two excerpts that you see here today, Sol as a teacher and Horacio as a student see that future. So Sol says, with this pedagogy, we have a goal of life, make a positive impact on the students' lives more than theory and academic content. It is the impact now, but also on a long term. And Horacio says, well, I have noticed how the teacher gives us recommendations for the future. And we talk about fair trade, for example, and how this is going to help look in the future, how fair trade is going to help our laborers of the land and the most marginalized communities to have some hope for the future. And I argue that these three emerging domains, being, belonging, and becoming, are just small attempts against the current sociopolitical status quo in education, which on a broader sense are no other than attempts for decolonization. And as Day and J. Mungal in 2018 explained, decolonization is about developing and sharpening our thinking process and pursuing politics for transformative change. And teachers continue saying that they are warriors and rebels against the status quo. They suggested curriculum, the market-based ideas to teach language teachers, then bring practical and concrete ideas in an attempt to challenge that idea of the market-based ideas. And we will see how this praxis is enacted in the classroom with a few examples. So what I'm trying to show you in this PowerPoint, in the next slides, is about how they enacted all of these being, belonging, and becoming. So at the beginning of each class, Sol asks the students to write a gratitude in English. She goes around the class making corrections or answering any necessary questions. And here we can see one of the students' exemplars about gratitude. And again, as you can see, there might be error or mistakes or whatever. But for Sol, she says that if you start your class in a nice mood, then that's going to set the stage for the rest of the day for the students. And that's her goal. And the excuse is use English to set this mood. Also, we can see in the picture one of the projects related to amplifying the Colombian culture while learning English. Here, students present about food and customs, and other students ask questions about recipes and exchange experiences in both languages, Spanish and English. So you can imagine there is a lot of translanguaging experiences here as well, in which the students use both languages to make meaning. And we can also see another example of a classroom activity called Organizations for Peace in Action, in which students create a project to learn about the community needs, what the community needs. And for example, here students want to tackle the problem of drug addiction by offering resources for after-school programs that support students through sports activities. And again, projects and presentations were done both in English and in Spanish, and obviously they were not that perfect, so to speak. But here, Hadasa promotes language learning with a focus on students' dreams and hopes, focusing on what they want to do after graduation and how they can better support their communities. We can also see examples of how this project looks at different artistic booklets that students share with peers. So moving on, I mentioned earlier in my presentation the idea of buen vivir, right? So data collected in this project show how the teacher and student participants are working collaboratively to gradually help overcome the social problems while engaging the students in these English pedagogical tasks in a slow but hopefully long-term process that I have called Slow Buen Vivir, SBV. So Slow Buen Vivir refers to all the actions geared towards addressing social justice issues for the purposes of living well and in harmony with each other, while the SBV enacted at El Barrio Southwest School does not have an immediate impact, while the hope is to impact students' lives and those in the community on a long run. So as I was finishing the dissertation and putting all of these things together, an emerging framework derived from the evidence and pedagogical experiences, this highlights the relationship between social justice, peace building, sentir pensar, and buen vivir that I explained in the beginning. So on one hand, teachers and students embrace their emotions, feelings, and reasoning as humans with their hunger for teaching and learning. And on the other hand, their actions are geared towards making changes to live well with each other. All of this is coming together into a proposed framework for teaching and research. So I'm showing this ontoepistemological oneness for teaching and research, which is a decolonial attempt to create a theoretical framework or a model that any of you who are in this presentation can use, and is represented here in a living and ever-evolving being and the relationship with others. So as some of you who have been engaging with research for a while, sometimes when you create frameworks, you use circles, Venn diagrams, arrows, etc. But then I decided to use this more like a living human being as a framework. So it's a subject, as you can see, who holds a slow rendering on one hand and the colonial praxis on the other hand. And this subject represents the concept of sentipensante, balancing emotion and reason, embodying a cosmovision situated in a diverse, dynamic, and ever-changing historical time and social space. So this proposed framework embodies an approach to pedagogy and research that is fundamentally rooted in being, belonging, and becoming. Their connections to themselves, the others, the planet, the universe, and the future of possibilities. So this subject is characterized by this framework that urge actions to seek mutual benefits to lead beyond Western conceptualization of development towards a symbiosis of social justice and peace building. So you see a little QR code and a website there. That's just a little promotion on advertisement. This framework, you can buy it and support my little business. I have t-shirts. So it's on a t-shirt that you can wear on and promote my work if you want to. And the proceeds are going to go for social justice charities here in the UK. So now I'm going to pause for a second because we're going to do like, I don't know, 5 minutes or so getting together. We have 15 participants or so. And what you're going to do in your breakout room is talk to each other, know each other, talk among yourself, and engage in one of these 3 questions. How did you relate to these ideas? Did you do similar work in your experience? Or do you have any examples, or can you come up with any examples for your context?
We were only starting to talk about something. But anyway, we can talk it more here, I guess.
Yeah, we can. Like once everybody's here, I think like you can tell us more about the context in Thailand.
Exactly. That's exactly what I wanted to do, because sometimes like we don't have the time to engage and exchange some of the ideas that have emerged from the presentation. So we have room 1, Erkan, Hind, and Seville. Is there anything that you want to share with us? Any reactions that you discuss, even if it is a tiny one?
Yeah, and I was in a room 1, and I related social justice to my topic in my PhD. I'm talking about EMI, but also I talk related to social justice. Like in my view, like EMI is kind of prioritize English than other or the mother tongue. So students get affected negatively, either like in exam because they become fairness issue, and also I talked about in a way that students by the time they started to have trans languaging, or like say code switching, so they started to replace their mother tongue with English. So in this way, students devalue their mother tongue and prefer English as a world language. And so any kind of research in the future in their mother tongue, they will not publish it because in Arabic or in other mother tongue. So they value only English, and they value native standard English. This is what a way that cause domain loss. So prioritizing English than a mother tongue. This is in EMI at least.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you so much for your sharing this reaction. Of course, in English as a medium of instruction, the idea is that you teach through the medium of English, right? And then because for the past 50 years or so, English language educators, through, I don't know, theories from the past, the idea that if you teach 100% in English, the students are going to learn 100%. But to this date, this is not certainly true. We are moving into a direction in which we are doing more translanguaging, plurilingual ideas of what it means to teach. We are welcoming the languages in the classroom as part of the English instruction as well. And this works especially for marginalized communities, because if you work with middle upper classes, elite classes, you don't have these problems because they are already speaking in English, because they already have the capital to study in English. So they don't necessarily care or need for this approach, right? Whereas for middle to lower classes, it is more valuable to them because it helps them to embrace their own home language, as you said, or your mother tongue, value their own culture, and use English as you could see in the presentations, they use English as a tool to value their language and culture and how they can use it to present and learn from that. So that's kind of like one of the highlights of the work that I have done and I continue doing with teachers from anywhere around the world. That's why I like this presentation today, because this is like an international community, and I like to see from different places around the world how this resonates. So let's go to room number 2. We have Jennifer, Mohammed, and Radna. Who wants to share something of anything that you did in your mini group?
Radna, do you want to talk?
Looks like Radna has something to say.
Do you want to speak?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you, everyone. I mean, thank you, Dr. Yecid. I am a student from a student from TESOL program at University of Edinburgh. So I had a very brief talk with Jennifer regarding the social justice for the LGBTQ community. As we had a debate with my fellow classmates regarding this, social justice, on how the small community has to be given a space or represented in, for example, coursebook or in material that we present as an English teachers, especially if it is in my country, for example, from Indonesia, it is kind of still very taboo. Or how we should do or act as an English teacher, where it is against our religion, for example. As an English teacher and also a Muslim, this thing is, I would say, I'm still not in the place where I can do anything. That's why I need to have more insights from the forum about this actually things. Yeah.
So Ratna and I were talking about, because I when we were trying to express, our interest or our focus on social justice, and I also work at the University of Glasgow, but I work in the engineering department, so I'm involved in EMI, but I've also been involved in writing materials for the ESOL classroom. So for students who are ethnic minority students, refugees, students working and living in Scotland, with an LGBT equalities focus in these materials. And so we were talking about how context impacts on your ability to do social justice, let's say, and how this was where we were getting to. It was a very short conversation, but I was talking about how I was enabled to write those materials because I was based in Scotland and because we have an Equalities Act, and therefore that is promoted within our education system. And so it was a positive step to write these, whereas to take the materials in some other countries would be almost impossible.
Yeah, I think you got a good point, Jennifer and Radna. One thing is, social justice work in language education is context-based. I'm coming from Canada, so in Canada, all of this is like, I would say, I'm going to put in quotes, easy to do, because Canada, we are a very open-minded society, so to speak. So it's sort of easier to talk about this and put up this concept of social justice and gender equality, LGBTQ items, freedom of speech and freedom of religion, freedom of thought. All of those sorts of things are easy to put on materials, as you mentioned, and resources for teachers. Although in Canada also there is backlash as well. But all this to say, there are countries that are things not possible. So what the message that I send to folks out there who are working in countries where some things are not possible, folks need to see, okay, I'm not able to do this, and that, but I think I can do this. One little thing that they know they could do that is helping us to move forward, the idea of equality, the idea of living well with each other that I presented earlier today. How can we live well with each other? And then Radna talked about the idea that some of the context is about Islam or Muslims, etc. So it's how can English language can acknowledge that background or cultural background and religious background into the English class, acknowledging that this is who I am and this is where I'm coming from, and how the English class can become and help and support to assert that identity, but also welcoming and inviting other types of different identities. And yes, it's a struggle that happens all around, that depending on the context, you can do some things and some others. But some of you might know that Denise has a wonderful book that you can just read the book and get some ideas, and which I know are in line with social justice and language education that you can use and adapt to your context. The last, the room number 4, which was Denise, Hatice, Nadia, and Paramed. So I wonder if any of you have any words, anything that you discuss, any examples, anything that you want to share with us.
Yes, I was talking about my context in Thailand that was really linguistically diverse with lots and lots of regional languages, and therefore we are learning English or choosing English as a second or third or fourth language. So you can see that there's a kind of variety of what we call Englishes. And you can see what comes with that is all sorts of linguistic discrimination against those, who are not choosing what they call it good English, or either British or American or whatever they want to call it. And what is happening here, linguistic discrimination or linguistic prejudices is at a very, very large scale, or is so pervasive and is almost everywhere. And the issue of social justice from language perspective is not really discussed at all. So that's why I'm really fighting for the equality in terms of languages, or the social justice, and yeah, so that's why I'm really interested in this idea or this issue.
Yeah, I think one of the big points that you highlighted today in this last part is about the linguistic diversity of many countries around the world. Because when we learn how to teach English, we come with the idea that we are teaching a monolithic classroom, like these students are coming with only one language and then I'm just going to teach them English. But it's important to acknowledge that diversity of languages and cultures in the classroom, and how you can use them in the classroom for the purposes of learning from each other, helping each other, supporting each other, comparing languages here and there. I have a piece, chapter called Transcultural Linguación, which is how we learn from the different cultures and different languages that are within our own culture and our own context and our own country, that but like we usually tend to make those comparisons with, as you mentioned, American English, British English, Canadian English, but we can continue doing the same work, but also with our own context, the variations of different languages in the classroom, and we move towards that sort of pluriversal applied linguistics world that I'm trying to put together in the near future. So because we don't have much time, I'm going to share the screen for the last time for a couple more slides to just wrap up the work that we're doing. So we just finished the breakout rooms, and the study that I conducted, so you yielded many implications, but I want to share with you two little pieces. One is for pedagogy, the inclusive practices enacted by the teacher participants in the study resonate with similar suggestions by some of the Colombian English teaching community, who recommended the need for language teachers to adopt pedagogical practices that make safe spaces, and somebody talked about this today, for students to learn about other languages and cultures while working towards social justice and peace building. And second, for language policy and planning. And in a country such as Colombia, in which there is violence and this one permeates the education, it is paramount that linguistic policies align the country's policies so that the needs of the most vulnerable and marginalized populations are met. So it is suggested that Colombia language policy and planning takes place at the many different levels and involve numerous stakeholders like the teachers making classroom decisions, the school administrations determining which languages might be taught, and the national government creating particular language policies and a flexible curriculum that allows to learning of as many languages as possible. Like in Paramel's example, how can the curriculum, the language curriculum, the policies in Thailand, for example, can welcome all the languages or as many languages as possible in the English language classroom, as opposed to say, you don't speak your language here, we speak in English here. So that's kind of like one of the implications. And the last slide is about what can be done in the future for research and in general knowledge mobilizations. So through my research, I learned that research cannot be objective. It is important to acknowledge the human emotions, the experiences and thoughts that emerge from participating in research. And these help us to reveal the essence of what the participants live. And as such, I consider important to use more inclusive methodologies in which participants are not seen as subjects of the study, but we are all co-creators of the research process in relation to other participants and their own context. So the work that I did a few years back is just my tiny attempt to disseminate knowledge in a different way. And as such, I suggest research that must be disseminated in alternative forms to reach broader audiences, and especially those who cannot have access to journals with high subscription costs. So I advocate for the use of other media as equal and legitimate forms of knowledge mobilization and dissemination. Various researchers, such as myself, have already begun to explore the use of blogs, vlogs, social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch TV, Twitter, YouTube, etc., research summaries and briefs translated into different languages, podcasts, and other audiovisual media. So I continue doing this work, and as a matter of fact, I'm grateful for you to allow me for this presentation, because this is one of the many ways that we can mobilize knowledge and engage knowledge and research. So that's why I did the breakout rooms, for us to engage in how we're going to relate to these topics, how we envision doing work towards social justice. So that's pretty much it for me. These are some of the key references of the work that I have done. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to follow me on Twitter, send me an email, or check my Linktree, which I have more information about research that I am conducting. So I think that's pretty much it for me now. I know we don't have much time, but I wanted to have a space for you to work amongst yourself and chat yourself. I guess we have like 4 minutes to, if anybody has a question, let me know.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Dr. Ortega. So indeed, we do have time for a few questions. So if anybody would like to ask Dr. Ortega for some clarifications, I just want to say thank you for the presentation, and especially for this very last part that you discussed, because what you mentioned about the visibility of research and the need to get it closer to people who do not have the means, even economic ones, to get access to this research is extremely important. It's something which I feel needs to be debated more, and I hope that things like ELINET are helping in this regard. But yeah, and definitely, as Nadia say, I will let Denise speak. But before that, anybody has any questions? I think most people
It always happens like it's at the end, like a lot of people don't have questions, but it's fine. You got my email. If you ever have a question, like are curious about anything, just feel free to send me an email at any point.
Right. Thank you so much. So, Denise, before we wrap this up, would you like to say something? Yeah, Denise, I'm going to leave the floor to you.
Yeah, thanks, Paolo. Thanks for organizing this event, and thanks, Yecid, for coming to our first ELINET Language and Social Justice Strand event. Yeah, I really appreciate it, and I think this was a really good kickoff in terms of thinking about not just pedagogical implications, but what you said about, like, you know, doing alternative forms of research. And I've been thinking a lot about it lately, especially in relation to like decolonization of knowledge, decolonization of curriculum. And I've come to, like, you know, whenever I go to conferences, I come back, you know, feeling more frustrated than ever, because I see more and more now that those, like, you know, who claim to decolonize knowledge through their research actually end up perpetuating colonial thinking and colonial ways of, like, you know, doing research. So I think there's definitely, like, you know, more to say about that, and, you know, and think about, yeah, how we can, like, you know, break these boundaries. Not necessarily a question here, but more like a general comment. I was going to also thank everyone for coming, and I just want to say a couple of things about the ELINET Language and Social Justice Strand. We are a new strand. Actually, we don't have a committee yet. So we're at the stage of, actually, I'm at the stage of hiring a couple of interns at the University of Glasgow, and also recruiting committee members and coordinators. So I do have a form that I'm going to share. Let's see, how do I share this? Collect responses. Okay. Yeah, copy link. So I'll put in the chat here. If you're interested in any forms of, like, you know, research or pedagogy in relation to language and social justice, and if you would like to be involved in ELINET Language and Social Justice Strand, you can be a member. And being a member means that you just, you know, get notifications about, you know, resources, events, collaborations. We do circulate lots of calls for grants and other kinds of opportunities. In case you're not familiar with ELINET, it's sort of based in Glasgow. It definitely started with Glasgow colleagues, but we do have 15 global branches. We do have a Thailand branch and a Turkey branch, and I don't know, like, you know, a branch in Italy. So so that means, like, the idea is that, you know, like, you know, we don't want to be a group of people, you know, initiating or leading this, like, you know, based in Glasgow, but, you know, we do have, like, you know, for instance, some amazing work coming out from Turkey, and you know, lots of events and other things. So it's part of maybe, like, you know, our decolonization efforts, like, you know, bringing different voices to the table. And our second conference actually will be held in Brazil, probably in October, and the theme is, correct me if I'm wrong, what was that? Local voices, global impact. Yes. So yeah, our theme is around social justice as well. So yeah, if you're interested in just becoming a member or taking a more active role, you know, being involved in a committee, organize events, help out with the conference, or develop resources, just complete the form, and I'll keep you in the loop in the following weeks. Yeah, thanks all for coming.
Thank you so much, Denise. I will stop the